Like, well, is this real? Just go to doge.gov. We line item by line item, we specify each item. So
we don't need their lumber. What do we need their lumber for? When you look at we subsidize them $200 billion a year.
And I should say, we will make mistakes. We won't be perfect, but when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly.
And I say Canada should be our 51st state. There's no tariffs, no nothing. And I say that.
Elon Musk just admitted to accidentally canceling Ebola funding during Trump's first cabinet meeting. Let that sink in. The world's richest man, now running government efficiency, casually mentioned cutting disease prevention money like it was just an oopsie. And Trump's reaction? Hand the mic back to Musk for more chaos instead of letting his actual health officials speak. This isn't normal government. It's like watching two kids playing dress up as world leaders while the adults in the room aren't allowed to talk. This has always blown my mind a little bit. 91% that watch this show regularly haven't subscribed. Could I ask you for a small favor before we start? If you like this show, what we do here, and want to support us, the free simple way you can do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. You'd think a cabinet meeting would focus on, I don't know, cabinet stuff, but no. Trump's first official gathering kicked off with what can only be described as the weirdest political prayer since ever. One of his cabinet members actually stood there and thanked God not for America, not for wisdom to govern wisely, but for creating Donald Trump himself. I'm not making this up. It was basically a thank you, Lord, for blessing us with the orange wonder moment that had even religious folks cringing. But the divine worship was just the appetizer before Trump served up the main course. A bizarre rant about eggs. Yes, eggs. Because nothing says I'm running the country competently like obsessing over breakfast ingredients. Trump went on about how egg prices were supposedly amazing during his previous administration, but are now a complete disaster. Here's the funny part though, Trump's egg memory seems as scrambled as the ones on your breakfast plate.
Of what's happening, some of the things they found, some of the horrible things they found, some of the theft and fraud, and we call it waste and abuse, but
I think we all want Ebola prevention. So we restored the Ebola prevention immediately, and there was no interruption.
And the New York Times reports that the top 5 biggest cuts that Doge claimed to have put forward.
It's not fair. It's not fair that they're not paying their way. And if they had to pay their way, they couldn't exist.
During his previous term, egg prices actually skyrocketed to record highs, especially in 2022 when bird flu outbreaks wreaked havoc on supply chains. But facts and Trump have always had a complicated relationship, kind of like me and my ex. We acknowledge each other exists but prefer not to interact. Not satisfied with just mangling breakfast economics, Trump then decided to completely flip reality on its head by claiming consumer confidence is at an all-time high. Meanwhile, back in the real world, the Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index just plummeted to 98.3, marking the biggest monthly drop since August 2021. But who needs accurate economic data when you can just make stuff up, right? The truly bizarre part wasn't even Trump's alternative facts festival. It was how his actual cabinet appointees just sat there like department store mannequins, occasionally blinking to prove they weren't actually cardboard cutouts. These are supposedly the best minds Trump could find to run the country, and they couldn't even muster the courage to clear their throats while their boss spouted easily disprovable nonsense. But wait, it gets weirder. Trump seemed genuinely confused about whether he's actually president now. While discussing consumer confidence, he referred to when Biden was still president as if he's living in some parallel universe where the election hasn't happened yet. It's like he's stuck in permanent campaign mode, still talking about how things were with us, rather than acknowledging he's the one in charge now. The whole scene had this surreal quality, a prayer worshiping Trump personally, followed by an economic fantasy tour through the dairy section, all while his hand-picked team of supposedly qualified officials just nodded along like those bobblehead dolls you put on your dashboard. This wasn't a cabinet meeting, it was a bizarre one-man show with a very expensive supporting cast who apparently checked their spines at the door. You almost have to admire the commitment to the bit. Most politicians at least try to sound like they know what they're talking about, maybe prep some talking points, perhaps glance at an economic report or two before discussing the economy, but Trump just wings it with the confidence of a mediocre white man explaining your own job to you. And his cabinet? They couldn't look more uncomfortable if they were sitting on furniture made of Lego bricks. Their faces frozen in that unique expression that says, I know this is wrong, but my career depends on me pretending it's fine. It's the same look my dog gives me when I catch him eating from the trash, a mixture of shame and defiance. Just when you thought Trump's economic fantasy tour couldn't get more bizarre, he handed the mic to his favorite billionaire bestie, Elon Musk, who proceeded to lecture actual government officials about how they're all terrible at their jobs. Nothing says functional democracy quite like watching confirmed cabinet secretaries sit in uncomfortable silence while a guy who named his made-up department after a dog meme threatens that America will go bankrupt without his help. Seriously, for a full 15 minutes of this so-called cabinet meeting, the actual cabinet might as well have been cardboard cutouts. Trump introduced Musk like he was the headliner at a concert, gushing about how the billionaire was sacrificing a lot and getting hit while uncovering horrible things and fraud in government. Meanwhile, the defense secretary, secretary of state, and other people who actually went through Senate confirmation hearings just watched. There's Musk rocking a MAGA hat like it's his first day at Trump University, standing at the edge of the table explaining his Department of Government efficiency. Yes, that spells DOGE, like the meme. The guy literally named his government department after an internet joke about a confused-looking Shiba Inu, and he's the one lecturing professional civil servants about efficiency. The Tesla CEO described himself as just humble tech support for the government, which is like calling a wrecking ball humble remodeling assistance. He then casually dropped the bombshell that without his brilliant cost-cutting ideas, America will go bankrupt. No pressure, everyone. Just the entire country's financial future resting on a Twitter guy's shoulders. But wait, it gets better. Musk then mentioned, like it was no big deal, that his team accidentally canceled very briefly funding for Ebola prevention. Oopsie, just a little mistake involving deadly disease control. You know how it is when you're clicking around on government systems. One minute you're checking email, the next you're defunding critical public health initiatives. Could happen to anyone. The weekend before the meeting, Musk had sent a charming email to federal workers demanding they justify their existence, which he later described as just a friendly pulse check to ensure employees have a pulse and 2 neurons. That's the bar, folks. Not excellence, not dedication. Just be alive and have the absolute minimum brain function required to fog a mirror. Inspiring leadership. This email caused such chaos that the Justice Department, Defense Department, State Department, and FBI had to tell their staff to ignore Musk's demands entirely. 21 federal employees actually resigned rather than participate in what they saw as dismantling critical public services. But who needs experienced government workers when you've got a guy who sells flamethrowers and posts memes all day? What's truly wild is that throughout all of this, Trump's actual cabinet appointees just sat there, occasionally nodding, looking like hostages in a bizarre political ransom video. Imagine being the Secretary of Defense with responsibility for America's entire military and having to silently watch as a tech billionaire with zero government experience lectures you about efficiency. The whole spectacle raises an important question. Who exactly is running this administration? Is it the people who were nominated, vetted, and confirmed by the Senate? Or is it the billionaire in the MAGA hat who got to dominate the first cabinet meeting while the professionals watched from the sidelines? With the actual cabinet reduced to silent props during Musk's efficiency lecture, Trump pivoted to international relations with all the subtlety of a wrecking ball through a china shop. Ever wonder what happens when the leader of the free world treats our closest ally like a delinquent tenant while proposing to sell American citizenship for the bargain price of just $5 million? The math gets fuzzy, the diplomacy gets fuzzier, and basic geography apparently becomes optional. After Elon finished his government efficiency TED Talk, Trump decided to enlighten everyone with his unique vision for North American relations. In what can only be described as a real estate developer's approach to international diplomacy, Trump casually suggested that Canada, you know, that sovereign nation with 38 million people that's been our ally for centuries, should just become America's 51st state, not a trade partner, not a military ally, a literal state. I say Canada should be our 51st state, Trump announced to the room of bewildered officials. There's no tariffs, no nothing, and I say that we give them military protection. Because nothing says respectful diplomacy like treating your largest trading partner like they're a helpless child who needs adult supervision. Trump continued his neighborly assessment by claiming, "Canada relies on us 95%, we rely on them 4%. Big difference, and it's not fair that they're not paying their way." It was like watching a landlord complain about tenants who've actually been paying their rent on time for decades. The foreign policy carnival didn't stop at the Canadian border. When the topic shifted to Ukraine, Trump's diplomatic finesse continued to shine with all the brightness of a dead flashlight. When asked about Ukraine's potential NATO membership, Trump abruptly waved it away. "NATO, you can forget about that." His message to a nation fighting for its survival against Russian aggression was essentially, give up, surrender, take whatever crumbs Putin offers you. Remember when presidents used to at least pretend to care about international alliances and standing up to dictators? Those were the days. But the true masterpiece of this cabinet meeting came when Trump unveiled his revolutionary economic plan, selling American citizenship like limited edition collectibles. For the bargain price of just $5 million, wealthy foreigners, including Russian oligarchs according to Trump himself, could buy themselves a golden ticket to America. "We could sell these $5 million gold cards," Trump mused, presumably while his economic advisors were frantically signaling for someone to cut his mic. According to Trump's mathematical wizardry, if they sold 10 million of these cards, they would rake in 50 trillion. That's right, the former president, current president, and self-proclaimed business genius somehow multiplied 5 million by 10 million and got 50 trillion instead of 50 billion. He was only off by a factor of 1,000, a rounding error if you're counting in Trump math. Perhaps most alarming was Trump's enthusiastic invitation for Chinese investment. "We want them to come in and invest," he declared. "I see so many things saying that we don't want China in this country. That's not right. We want them to invest in the United States." This from the same man who spent years warning about the dangers of Chinese economic influence. But consistency has never been Trump's strong suit, unless you count being consistently inconsistent. Throughout this diplomatic demolition derby, Trump's actual cabinet members, the ones supposedly in charge of implementing these policies, sat in uncomfortable silence. These weren't low-level staffers, but department secretaries tasked with running the federal government. Their contributions to the discussion amounted to precisely 0 words, with their participation limited to nodding on cue and occasionally offering polite applause like trained seals at a Sea Park show. The scene resembled less a meeting of government officials and more a monarch holding court while his subjects dare not speak unless spoken to. As Trump bounced from suggesting annexation of Canada to abandoning Ukraine to selling citizenship like Trump steaks, not a single cabinet official raised a question, offered a perspective, or gently suggested that perhaps some of these ideas might benefit from further analysis. And just when you thought this cabinet meeting couldn't get any weirder, Trump decided to wrap things up by proudly showcasing an AI-generated fantasy video of Trump Gaza. Because nothing says presidential like reimagining a war-torn humanitarian crisis as a luxury beach resort with gold Trump statues everywhere. The bizarre video featured a shirtless Netanyahu lounging by the pool with Trump, bearded ladies dancing, and Trump getting cozy with a woman who definitely isn't Melania. Talk about presidential fantasies gone wild. While Trump was busy showing off his digital Gaza paradise, the actual Gaza faces devastating humanitarian conditions. This wasn't just your average weird meeting. It was the perfect finale to a cabinet session where the actual appointed officials might as well have been potted plants. Apparently in Trump's America 2.0, government meetings are now just billionaire playdates and AI daydreams while reality crumbles outside the window. Classic grumpy Trumpy.